Andrea, we are venturing out of the Hallmark universe. So that means maybe we have to take things a little more serious. As we talked about in family practice. You scolded me, it's Hallmark universe, but today we are talking about Mr. Monk's last case. Was this a great farewell to the beloved series, or did it tarnish the legacy?
Ooh, I can't wait to find out.
This is Eric.
This is Andrea.
And this is Hallmark Mysteries and Horror.
This podcast was created by fans for fans and is not affiliated with or sponsored by Hallmark or the Hallmark Channel.
Okay, Andrea, this has been a crazy week. We got some really big news from the People magazine for Stephen Huszar.
So excited.
You're so excited. I will say that, as I put up those posts on Instagram about the new news of 4 new Jane mysteries that seem to be coming our way, it is a totally polarizing one. Some people are just like you, gaga, like, oh my God, this is great. Love it, love it, love it. And other people are like, get out the gun, shoot me. I'll be the next victim in the first series. So I don't know.
Oh, I mean, that was number 3 for me. I love the Jane mysteries. I see potential there. I was talking with Georgia in our DMs, and we were just kind of talking about Jodie Sweetin, and she has a following. And I think that probably has helped this a lot because, she was in, obviously, that's where I grew up with her on Full House and then in Fuller House on Netflix. So she has quite a big following, more so, than some of maybe the other ones. I know there's some big like Instagram followings for some of the people, which is maybe why we also are getting potentially another Gilded from Instagram posts that we saw. So that I feel like is maybe playing a huge factor in what they're renewing, even though the fans maybe aren't as vocal online, but I feel like maybe the numbers are actually showing different things. What do you think?
I have to agree with you. The other thing we don't know is we see like that initial rate, or we hear about that initial ratings, right? The first 3-day thing. But then one of the things I've learned by talking to various Hallmark people is the replays are also what show, like, how does it do when they replay it on the Hallmark Channel or in the Mystery Channel, right? Over air. How is it doing on the app? And when I talked to John Christian Plummer, he said that that's one of the things about Francesca Quinn. While at the time it didn't do great, it has actually performed better and better and better as time progresses. So, cross our fingers. That was our both. Was that no? That was my number 2, I think, and your number 1. But hopefully we get another Francesca Quinn. But I do think maybe there's some of the numbers there. But I'm 100%. While it was not my favorite, I also thought that there's potential. The side characters on there are good. We need Stephen Huszar to be stronger in this, which hopefully he will be, because this is the role he's made for. When you see him in the rom-coms, I don't know. I like the guy, but he's just a little awkward in those. Whereas as a detective, nails it. So I'm excited. Like I say, I think even the movies I didn't like, I still want to see at least a couple more to give them the chance. So I'm all on board with you. I may not be dancing in the streets. There may be a couple others that I really want to hear some news on, but consider me excited.
Well, my next question about those, when are we getting these? Because we're going to be starting Christmas, end of October is what they've been doing. So right now it looks like Tip Line, is that the only one for June that we know of?
Yeah.
So where are we getting all these mysteries that are supposedly taking place in filming?
We're
Like,
like late in May that you think you would
right,
have heard something, right? Yeah, yeah.
right. So that's where I'm like, when are we getting any of these new mysteries before October?
Well, all right. It has to, June, we talked about it before. June has to be the new cases. It has to be because it was in post-production several weeks ago. It's got to be wrapped up. I will say late June, we're getting cases.
I mean, I hope so. Because, unless they do what they did again with garage sales when it used to be on, they would do the whole month of August. And, every Sunday was a new garage sale. So maybe they're saving up and they'll dump maybe Jane the whole month of August with 4. That would be kind of cool.
That would be.
If they would, I mean, I've talked about wanting that again, because I think it helps you invest into the movies a little bit more too. But we'll see.
You're not alone there too. I've talking to various people really did like that month of August, like you said, where it was that garage sale, every week. And then just when I go through IMDb and I look at old movies and I'm like, oh wait, this movie came out, how they would do a lot of movies that would come out with 2 episodes in 2 months, or they had a lot more consistency, it seemed, for some short-term turnarounds, as opposed to movie 2 years later, follow up.
It's probably why Mystery 101 has the fan base it does. I mean, when you're releasing on a consistent basis, and the same
like
with
every 6
Aurora and
months or
Garage
something.
Sale. Yeah, like you can really get into the movies, whereas where we have it right now, it's hard because then you have to remember. And because we've had so many, and maybe people aren't, obviously, like we are recording podcasts about them, people aren't that invested in them. They might be watching them, but then they have to remember, who are these people again? Do I care enough about this one? And so it's a whole reinvestment of energy. So we'll see.
Well, and then the other news was the Sarah Drew and Mistletoe Mysteries. You were talking Georgia. Last Christmas, she said, this was on Audible, she's like, you got to listen to this. It had Colby Smothers, or whatever her name is, from How I Met Your Mother, as the narrator. Really actually liked it. It was really cute. It's what you would expect. It's not a murder mystery type thing. It's a little bit lighter, but it's still a lot of fun. And that, from what I understand, I think is going to be like 5 or 6 episode. So it's not a singular one. It's going to be an episodic mystery. So that's going to be something new and different for Hallmark as well.
Ooh.
And Sarah Drew, I know you like her.
Yeah, I think she's fine.
Yeah, I like, even in the movies that sometimes are not necessarily the best movie or have some issue with, it's never been a result of her.
Yeah. No, I think she's fine.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think it's going to be fun. I like the idea too of that Christmas mystery that's appropriate for the time. I think, Hallmark probably is going to steer away from a lot of, murder over the holidays. So that's to your point, the condensed window. I can't imagine they're going to compete with murder over Countdown to Christmas.
That is interesting. So this will be the first year that they've switched over to the mystery.
Right.
So maybe they will play mysteries longer and then just kind of dribble in some Christmas content.
I just don't see them doing murder when you've got the Christmas thing going.
That is interesting. Huh.
And I'm thinking all those movies that used to be over on Hallmark Movies and Mysteries will probably be on Hallmark Family. More like the more serious ones that they had. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you have 3 stations, and if you're gonna, I mean, I don't know how many. Do you know how many they've announced that they want to do this year? Because you're gonna need more than 1 station if you're gonna compete with what you have been doing.
With the 40, 41, 42 that they've done in the past.
That's interesting.
And I keep seeing news about the Christmas movies that are getting produced and, made already. It'll be interesting. We see our first holiday with mystery. We know what one of the things is, but that's it. So I'm excited. Mistletoe, if anyone hasn't listened to it, I'm not sure if you should go ahead and listen to it, if it will distract or not. It's an Audible original. It's free on Audible if you have an Audible account. That's kind of always fun. And it's a series of them. So it's 2 seasons, but a lot of fun. All right. Should we talk a little Monk?
Let's talk Monk. So do we want to talk about the show first and then we can dive into this movie? Okay.
Sure. Let's talk about the show.
For myself, I have seen every Monk episode, probably multiple times. This is my show. I always tell, I kind of ask, so I work a lot.
This is your show? Liar.
Well,
Liar.
This is one of my shows. So this is one of the shows. I always ask people, I work in the postpartum space, and I always ask new moms. Usually there's a show that you watch or you binge because you're spending a lot of time potentially nursing or feeding your baby or just letting them sleep on you. And usually you have a show. Well, this was my show when my youngest was born. And so I had not previously watched Monk until he was born. I'm like, what show could I get into with my oldest? It was Diagnosis Murder. clearly I have a trend. And so I watched all of that with him. And then so my youngest, I was like, well, let me get into this Monk because that's on the Hallmark Channel and, it airs all the time. So I started watching it. And now, like every morning, I usually will record a couple of the episodes to kind of just have on when I cook. It's kind of like the comfy show. It is like my Murder, She Wrote. Murder, She Wrote is my like weekend binge. If I'm like a rainy day, I'll put on that in the background because again, I've seen all of those episodes a bazillion times. And Monk is kind of that for me. So it is like my comfort food. I love it. All of the characters. This is such a brilliant show, I think. So for me, this one is top tier. I will be coming at it from that angle, just to warn everyone.
I will say I have not. I'm not like you. I've seen Monks. I have not seen all of them. I did do a little binge of episodes. I went ahead and pulled a little Andrea trick, and I asked on my Hallmark movie reviewer account, "Hey, what are your favorite Monk episodes?" And I got a list of them. And I just binged a whole bunch of ones that were fairly consistent with what people had as their favorites. And I agree with you. It is really well done. And the characters, there's like the quirkiness of it is not a random quirkiness. It's a very thoughtful quirkiness that I think a lot of people, if you just sort of take it at face value, you'd be like, eh. But if you actually are paying attention, it's pretty darn good, right? The other thing is that I know of Monk is I've listened to these podcasts on mystery and how you create mysteries. Monk is considered a masterpiece of the mystery plot devices, the way they do it. There's the one where they're at the fair, and it's about how do you have a murder when there's nobody there. And that's when he's on the not the merry-go-round, the Ferris wheel, or in the captured room when there's only like one person in the room, or things like that. Just all these different mystery devices. Monk utilizes them all and utilizes them brilliantly. So it actually, for actual hardcore sleuthers who like to investigate and get into the components of how you make mysteries, Monk is fantastic there. So let's just take away the good writing, the TV aspect of all there. It is a great mystery series for just sleuthers.
And it originally aired, I just looked it up to make sure we had those dates, is from 2002 to 2009. So that's when it originally aired. If people are like, oh, when did this fall in? Because then watching this movie, which was, filmed in 2023, you could definitely see characters obviously have aged. And,
right.
That was also, I found it, fun to kind of see. And you're like, wow, like I haven't aged a bit since 2002.
How did they get old? I didn't get old.
I know, right? So let's kind of dive into this movie. It's Mr. Monk's Last Case. And again, it's on Peacock.
Well,
so if anyone
before
has
we go
Peacock,
there, what's your favorite episode?
I mean, I told you the one that I kind of was to watch was the Mr. Monk's and the Three Pies with his brother. But honestly, I'd really have to sit down and think because there are so many. For me, my Murder, She Wrote, I have the one episode. I mean, I have a lot of them there too, but I have the one that kind of rises to the top. With this one, I don't have any. I have a lot that are really just solid. They have a great storytelling, and they take you in different locations. They take you, which I'm big on the setting and that experience that they bring you on. So they don't just leave you in San Francisco the whole time. They take you out. All of those, sometimes they can lose me. So in some of the Murder, She Wrote ones, like the Japan, or when they go to China, like some of those are not my favorite, but Monk, I feel like they really do shine when they leave San Francisco as well. So I would have a tough time picking, but that one comes to mind just because I do like his brother and him and their, Ambrose, their dynamics there. That was kind of fun.
One last question, because you are more of a Monk aficionado than I am. Molly, the daughter, who plays a big role in the movie, was she in the series, or is she introduced just here?
So they find out about her, the last season, maybe the last few episodes, and maybe we meet her. I can't even remember. I haven't seen that last season more than once, I don't think.
Okay.
And
But
so I can't remember if
she
she's in
wasn't
there.
a major character
No.
in the TV.
No, and there is a little incongruency a little bit. If you watch from the beginning to like the end, they do change some of the details I've noticed in just, as one does if you watched through the whole thing multiple times, you're like, oh, this wasn't quite what they said. But if you watch it once through, you don't pick it up. But if, you watch it
Yes.
multiple times, you're like, oh, that's not quite what they said when they started the season. So
Most
there are a few
most
of
series
those.
do that though. Like,
Yes,
man, follow
100%.
Golden Girls through that all of theirs, and they contradict each other all the time. So,
I
but
love Golden Girls as well.
yes, I did not know. All right, we're totally digressing here. We haven't talked about Monk, and we're already like halfway through the podcast. But being now with your Murder She Wrote, we get all this Murder She Wrote stuff in our Instagram feed for the podcast site, and I had no idea that B. Arthur and what's
Angela
her
Lansbury.
Angela Lansbury were like total BFFs. Like
Mm-hmm.
all the stuff, it's always like B.
Yep.
Arthur is in
Yep.
there, which is kind of crazy.
So I'm like, my two shows, I'm surprised they
Yeah, I
didn't
know.
do a crossover. I mean, they have some crossover, like Stan is in both shows from Golden Girls. Like he also plays a detective in Murder She Wrote. So there are some crossovers, but
B.
never
Arthur never
them.
guests on it.
No, that would have
Yeah,
been
that's
really
weird.
cool. Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you tell
All
us
right.
what movie we're about to
What's the
discuss?
recap? Yeah, Mr. Monk's last case. It follows Monk, a brilliant detective with obsessive compulsive disorder. He returns to solve one last case involving his stepdaughter Molly, a journalist preparing for her wedding. Now, I will also give you a warning with this. There is suicide ideation. So, just a warning if you are going to watch this movie, throwing that out there because that is in this movie. I was actually, the first time I watched the movie, I was kind of like, whoa, wasn't expecting it to go kind of in that darker direction. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
That's one of my comments I had too.
Overall, though, for me, I still give this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. I thought it was fun to have the old cast back together. And again, just because I did just come off of watching this, because my son's only 15 months old. So I'm not talking, I haven't been watching Monk for years. It just started happening. And then I got this movie. So it was kind of like the perfect timing for me to dive into Monk, because then you can finish with the finale. So it lined up for me. I didn't have that nostalgia per se of like, oh, I remember it this way. It was, hey, I just watched this a year ago and this fits perfectly. Again, as I had just stated, I did think the movie was maybe a little bit darker, and it took a little bit to get into this. Like the first, I was trying to, I think 40 minutes is what I wrote down. It was a little bit slower, setting some stuff up. Did I love all of the things that they did or were trying to do? Not as much as you had talked about with Molly. Like maybe I liked how they brought it in, but it was a lot of Molly. I would have liked more of maybe the older cast thrown in throughout the whole movie, but that's just because that's what we know. I did enjoy Griffin, the storyline there with her, fiance is the one who ends up, spoiler alert, getting killed and figuring out that mystery. I laughed out loud in a couple of the scenes, especially the one with the bomb scene with the poop on the on the shoe. I mean, just classic Monk of like everyone's freaking out, and this Tigar runs over and she's like, "Oh my gosh, are you hurt?" And he's like, amputate my foot," and she's like, "Oh my gosh," and it's poop on the bottom of the shoe. I mean, that's just a classic Monk. And again, some people don't enjoy that type of humor. I know that's one of the criticisms of this show is people think Monk is too out there and, too much. I enjoy that. I enjoy those characters. So for me, that all worked. The only thing I wish they would have also tied in was Harold. So Harold plays a thread throughout the Monk series. And I think, he wrote a letter to Harold. We saw Adrian writing that letter to him, but actually having him in the movie, I think that would have been a kind of nice little touch, throwing him a scene, just as they did through, Dr. Nevin Bell, his therapist, was in there, which again, brilliant to have him back in. So
they had to pull him out of retirement and talk him into doing it.
Did they?
Yeah, he wasn't planning on it. And apparently Hector Alonso, I think that's what his name is, right? Is retired. And so Tony, how do you say his Shalab, whatever his name is?
Yeah.
He had to do like this personal thing to get him to appear again.
Well, shoot, he must have just retired because he was in Last Man Standing, and that just ended, what, a couple years ago, right? That's interesting.
Maybe.
Yeah. So that for me, that all worked. I'm curious to know what did you think of this?
It's very interesting because all your things, I'm kind of was on the opposite. I will say I enjoyed and I am inspired enough where I'm going to keep watching more of the episodes because I truly am enjoying them. But I gave this a 2. And
Oh,
to me, it
hurt my
just
heart.
seemed like it was kind of a money grab where you're talking about, oh, it's great seeing all the characters. It just seemed like they brought them back to bring them back. And they were just sort of little eye candy, like, oh, you have her, you have him. Like they didn't really contribute to the movie. I didn't feel, right? So I found that kind of empty. And it's funny because we're just very opposite here. I thought it would have been so much better movie if they really had dived into Molly and their relationship more so and had it be more focused around really that where because Molly was there and it's the theme throughout, but she was sort of just in and out, right? Like she should have been a sidekick helping him solve it, or I don't know, just bonding more because that is all that's left to Trudy, right? And he obviously, as you said, there's got the suicide tones, which was very dark. I was not prepared for that at all because it was not just like a little touch. No, it was a constant theme that was pretty heavily weighed down throughout the whole movie, right? So I thought that could have been the guiding light that sort of he was able to find her and still be able to have Trudy, alive in that. So, but I don't know. And it's funny too. Yes, the scene with the poop on the shoe was funny, but in my note was it just seemed to lack the charm where in the shows there was every episode several times where I literally was laughing out loud. I was sitting there watching it with my headphones on and the iPad, my wife on the couch on the other side, and I just burst out laughing. She's like, "What?" And I try to explain it, of which you can't explain, right? And I'm not even sure it's her humor either. That if I would have played it for her, she would have got it and it would have been out of context, whatever. But every single one, I was cracking up multiple times throughout this one. And, I smiled a few times, but I just didn't have that same charm that, that you had. So, like I said, I gave it a 2. I maybe I'll give it a watch again. But I will say my daughter, who is a very big Monk fan, has watched all of them as well. When I said, "Hey, I'm diving into the movie," thinking she'd be all excited, and she's like, "Ugh," and such. Like it's not the shows. So I'm like, whatever. And because I don't always agree with her, but in this case, I did.
That's funny how we can watch the same thing and
Literally the exact opposite.
complete opposite, like didn't like it, liked it for the exact
Eh,
same reasons. That's
Right.
interesting.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was laughing when you were saying your stuff. I couldn't, I was like chuckling because
That's
you're like,
funny.
oh, I like this. I'm like, but wait,
You
that's what I
hated
didn't
it.
like.
That's
And just,
awesome.
or how something hit with you and,
Missed with you.
missed with
Oh,
me.
that's
So, but you know what? That's the beauty of the mysteries too. When everyone, and this it drives me crazy when we get all these messages of nobody likes that, whatever Jane mysteries I'll use, for example. Yeah, we get all these things. Nobody likes Jane mysteries. I'm like, no, you didn't like Jane mysteries, but a whole bunch of other people did, or no one likes this one, right? There's very
100%.
few mysteries that are out there that have been even gilded. When we, showed the Danny Griffin thing, we got a lot of positive people who were very excited, a lot of positive responses. It didn't hit for us. It hit for a lot of people. So that's the thing. It's there's no universal, right? Maybe there's some universal likes where everybody just this was everyone loved it, but there's no universal hated it. We all have our things. So, like I said,
Agreed.
I gave it the 2, which like I didn't hate it, but like I say, it felt like a money grab.
I mean, I could
Uh,
see that. Well, what about the mystery? How did you like that one?
found the mystery kind of a miss for me. I think they could have done it in a better way. As I just mentioned, Monk is like the gold standard for way to craft a mystery. And the notion of slicing up a tape measure, it just you wouldn't be able to reassemble that whole thing. Like they could have done it another way of clever, because a tape measure, the way it works, I mean, cut out a whole middle section, but it's metal. It would be like ding, 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 ding. How do you hook it back up? So it annoyed me. I I didn't like it. The thing I really did enjoy about it was when what's the millionaire guy, the guy who killed, right?
Yep.
He fairly early on is like, yeah, I did it. What are you going to do about it? Like, so that's the thing about Monk. It's not like, oh, we have to solve it and it's going to wait till the end, the surprise. And it's like, good luck proving it. And then that's the brilliance of Monk, is that you see how his brain works and does it. And to me, they sort of did a much bigger leap to get there than they do in the TV shows. And then when it came down to the reason, I think they could have just done it in a much more clever way. Maybe a hydraulic bridge that raises and lowers. Right.
Oh, okay, that scene, I was looking at everyone else's faces as, Randy was doing that. And it was, I mean, you could clearly tell that they were trying to like stay in character and not actually crack up. So I found that to be the funny part. Like the scene itself, I was like, oh, kind of funny, not laugh out loud. But then watching everyone's faces, like clearly trying to stay like, don't crack, because that to me was the funny part of that little bit. I completely agree with you with the mystery. Monk, that is, who's done it. You're just trying to figure out why and how did they get there, and
Right.
that's kind of the brilliance there. I like those mysteries. Again, some people, that's not their thing. They'd rather try to guess along. Personally, I'll take either. If it's well done. So that to me was there. I didn't mind the mystery, I guess, with the bungee one. I guess I didn't really, as you're telling me this, I'm like, I didn't really think about that. The tape measure, like, how did they get
Like
that back together?
the
And
number of cuts you'd have to do in a metal
as you're
tape
saying that, I'm like,
measure.
yeah, that doesn't really track. So if you're not really paying attention heavily into the details, like myself for that one, I let that slide. But as you say that doesn't exactly work. So, oh well. Whoops. Can't win them all. Didn't win that one, I guess.
Yeah. Like I said, you could do one splice in it where you just took out from like, because in the middle it's, probably 25 foot, I'm just guessing, tape measure, standard tape measure, take out from 13 to 13 and a half feet and splice. It's not like you're going to, when you pull at your tape measure, you just do it. So better than taking a quarter inch every thing. Like I say, you'd have 700 splices in this damn thing. Whatever.
Well, what about the romance? How did the romance work for you?
I'd like to say it's very sweet the way that he's still so in love with Trudy, but it went dark. I mean, right? Like, I mean, the pain. So it 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 was very dark, and he clearly, loved her immensely. I think if you watch the shows, you watched them all, so you got to go through the progression. But even in the handful that I watched, it's very clear. So I think that, it is nice. I like how she comes back and is supportive and encouraging, and that relationship, it's very tender, but it just went, it went dark, and it was sad. And I wish they would have dove more into Molly. That's he's a dad of her now, and there's a wonderful thing between, even if it's a stepfather or whatever, but clearly they had a good relationship. And that even went dark because that I can't pay for the wedding, so that was like the final straw of me offing myself. So I don't know. Like I said, it's sweet but sad.
I mean, I guess some of that, like, if you're thinking, I mean, if you're really breaking it down, you're like, okay, I mean, if he has OCD, and Trudy, he seems to be very much obsessive with, and that's 22 years later after the show ends, that he has progressed and he's still just as infatuated with her as he was, when the show started now. Uh, and then losing all of your friends in terms of like they moved or they're no longer in your life, your therapist is retired. That's probably a lot and that's heavy. And I guess as we're talking about this, I'm like, I would have liked to see a little bit more of like, hey, what happened from like 2009 to 2024? We know Molly comes in there, but we don't know much besides, 2020, the COVID, and having Monk be, prime Monk. That would be also, I wouldn't have mind having a little backstory there of like, how did this evolve? What happened? Obviously we know everyone left, but like who who were those stable people in his life then if everyone left him? Like he probably was feeling very alone. And that's where we can kind of lean into like, this is why he is the way he is during this movie is he's feeling like, hey, I just have Trudy, and that's the only person I'm talking to constantly. As even in the therapist's office, when the therapist, gets the tissues for himself because he's now
Right.
realizing what's happening with Monk. I thought that was a really well done scene of just like, oh wow, like you are in a dark place. So again, I enjoyed I've talked about it on the show before with Trudy and coming out with all of the people the souls that he has helped save and move on. To me, that is probably one of the highlights, I guess, of the movie. I think that ending was really well done. Like
100%
that to
agree.
me saved the movie in essence of being really maybe borderline a 3 for me to like, oh, I really enjoyed how they did that at the end.
I could not agree with you more. I thought the ending was fantastic. It's kind of, we'll go to our haunted harmony,
Yeah.
right? Kind of a thing like, oh, there's a lot of people who still need that help. And Monk brings a certain skill, and the touching thing of like, oh, I don't recognize you. Oh, I'm still, in at the morgue kind of thing. I thought that was really touching, and yeah, great ending, gives chance for more. It is Mr. Monk's last case, so I hope they don't use it as a reason to bring him back. It had its send off.
I can't
Mr. Monk's
imagine
last case,
more.
right?
I mean, because if everyone left, like they, went
Right.
back to where they were, it wouldn't make sense to do anymore. Plus, you'd want those characters. You don't want to bring in new people, and I think you would lose some of that. I mean, the highlight, the intrigue of Monk is having those supporting cast and having them be who they are, and then a new generation would have to get interested in Monk. Maybe then they would, but I don't know if a new generation would be into
my
Monk.
my daughter's 26. She loves it.
I mean, even younger.
Oh,
That's what I
I'm
was.
gonna tell her that now she's officially like too old for something. You're gonna crush her. All right.
Oh, like even younger. I don't know. 26. I mean, that's on the cusp of like marketing people being like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. She's in a prime buying one that
Shoot.
24 to whatever. No, that by the way, we talked about it before when we were getting ready, and I said, "Oh, I'm surprised that his assistant never like she would have been great for the rom-coms." It was this one, Natalie. Like I just found her cute, bubbly, wonderful personality. She is the one, by the way. I didn't realize there was the
Verona.
original. Yeah, I didn't know that. I'd only seen all the monks I'd seen up until my little binge always had the second
And very
assistant.
different personalities. Like
So,
it was when they switched over that season, I was like, whoa, this is a different. She came out very abrasive those first few. If you've seen the first few when Natalie Teeger was introduced, I was like, I don't know if I like her. Like she starts out really mean, I thought, to Monk. And then she slowly has softened as the seasons went on, because I'm sure they had feedback of like, she's too intense. Like she's being really mean to him. And then she softened up a bit. But well, what about characters? Speaking of characters, what was your character corner?
he wasn't in it much, but he made an impact for me. The
Oh.
assistant, when Monk was getting his book deal taken away,
I thought we were going to say the same one. No, we're not.
was Alexander Nunez, who is Liam from True Justice.
Oh my gosh. I loved him too. And I didn't even realize that was him. Oh, that's awesome.
Yep. And I was hoping that was going to be his, like, after watching it, I couldn't tell if that was like the publisher assistant or his assistant because you never saw him again, right?
I thought he was like an editor for him, and that he
Yeah,
was his new editor, and then it
that's
didn't work out.
his title's assistant. So I don't know
Oh, assistant editor. Oh,
but and actually I will give you that scene was very funny when it was like, here's what we're going to do. You're going to leave the room. You're going to send somebody else in here who's going to say something completely different. Or how about everybody just leaves the room and no one talks about this anymore, which is very monk-esque,
yes.
right? And I would love to see more of that through the entire movie, which was not there. But yes, so we got to see Liam in one of his other roles. Once again, styling, great, fantastic. Obviously a little role, but stood out to me because I'm on a crusade to get pretty much most of the mysteries or episodes, but I want more true justice. So I want to see, gosh, we're all over the place today, by the way, but just to see that ensemble cast and where they do focus on different people and not just be the main two characters in there with true justice. They could do PJ, they could do Liam, they could do Sarah as well. Doesn't have to just be Casey, right? There's just so much. So, all right. How about you?
Back to Mr. Monk.
Yeah, back to Mr. Monk's last case. Who was your character corner?
Also had a small role, but a mighty one, Griffin. I found him to be endearing, charming, super attractive. I must say, I was like, oh no, because I could see the writing on the wall the first time. I'm like, they're gonna kill him off. Shoot, because he was my favorite.
I thought he was going to be bad. I didn't know. I wasn't expecting him to get killed. I thought he was going to turn out like he was actually bad.
I saw that as soon as I was like, oh, they're gonna kill him, and there goes the rest of the movie for me. Shoot. So he was my standout, besides of course seeing everyone back together. I enjoyed those, but I was looking for a side character, so to speak, and he was that for me. Well, let's dive into some trivia.
Speaking of which, though, that his death, that was pretty like powerful, the way that they did it, where he's going over and then you just see Molly's like reaction to it. Like this movie, which you saw all the episodes, it had a lot more of like those kind of emotions in it than the series seemed to have. Like I said, the series was charming and light and fun, whereas this had a lot of like serious kind of things going. But just like, couldn't even imagine her like, oh, there he goes, and then she just sees everyone's reaction of like, oh shit, right? I couldn't imagine. But all right, we on to some trivia.
Yeah, you go first because I got 4 trivia for you.
I'm going to go back to that editor's room, and the editor at the beginning there, that was the monk's real live wife. So we got a little bit of Liam in there, and then his wife, Tony Shalhoub. I don't know how to say his name. I'm sorry. We're probably never going to be a guest on the show, but it was kind of funny there. And then at the very beginning, what was funny, my wife started watching this with me and then went on with her day, but she's like, Mr. Monk, they start with a flashback. He's like, he hasn't even aged. What's weird? This is like going on. I'm like, I tried to explain to her, I'm like, well, they're starting in a flashback. And that's why
that was the very first episode. I thought that was a nice touch.
Which is the candidate, Mr. Monk, and the candidate. So yeah, so the flashback was of which I believe is a 2-part, but goes back to the very, very beginning for the flashback at the beginning of his last case. Takes it to his first case.
Well, trivia 1. So I talked about this the last episode. I was going to look into why Sharona was replaced, and it looked like it was due to contract disputes. She wanted to be paid more, same as I think her co-stars, and they didn't want to, and out she went. So that was what happened there. Then another trivia. So for the first 5 seasons, Monk's preferred brand of bottled water was Sierra Springs, which is a real life bottled water. And his refusal to drink any other water was an important plot for many of the episodes. So anyone who's watched the show, you probably know that. But then in season 6, due to another contract dispute, Sierra Springs and the USA Network, the brand of water was changed to a fictional brand called Summit Creek. So if you're diving through these episodes, you'll have to watch that break from season 5 to 6 and how they switch, because it does play a huge part throughout the series.
Now, did you at like when you were watching, did you actually
I did
notice?
not notice. No, but when I read this, I was like, I'm gonna look for this because it is. I mean, he does talk about this in the episode, so I'm gonna look for that now. Another one. So in the first, this one is, I noticed this right away, and I have looked into this. I'm sure if you've watched enough of these, you probably noticed. In the first 2 seasons, Monk's deceased wife, Trudy, was portrayed by Stelina Roosh. In later episodes, in pictures, flashbacks, and then in this movie, it's Malera Hardin, who is known as Jan from The Office.
Thank you. Because
So,
when
in
I
case
went
you were
back,
wondering, yeah,
yes, I was going
yeah,
back and I knew it was Miller Hardin. And I was watching one of the marathon, Mr. Monk in the marathon or whatever it is. And I'm like, that just does
that's not the
not look
person.
like her. But I'm
No.
like, I guess it is. She was just so young. She looks so different. Oh, thank
No,
you.
no,
Now I know I'm not crazy because
no.
I'll admit I'm not usually the best at being able to pick up somebody from an earlier role. So, oh, that explains so much.
Because I picked that up
You
too.
should have started with that one for me.
Sorry. I know that was one where I looked into it before because I was like, that doesn't look like the same person. And it's not. And then one last one, which I think is really, this would be really interesting to think about. So producers originally considered, instead of casting the person they did for Sharona, they were going to cast Queen Latifah. That would have been an interesting experience. I mean,
I can
completely
see it
different.
though. I
Yes.
could
And
totally
so
see that.
that, I thought that was kind of a fun little nugget as well. So I don't know why she wasn't or why they went that direction, but
Yeah.
I guess she was on The Bone Collector as a nurse, and so they thought she would play a good nurse for him. So
I could totally see that though. That would have been brilliant. Brilliant.
yeah. Well, what about Hallmark and Chill? What do you got for us there?
I'm gonna go with Psych. Kind of for me, a similar type thing. You have a main, protagonist who has like kind of a interesting skill, shall we call it, personality kind of thing, or however we're gonna go, and just solve it with a lot of quirkiness and all that. Once you can still watch that in Hallmark. So I just find it has a similar type vibe to it. I don't think it's once again, as I was talking about Monk and the pure mystery device aspect of it, I don't think it's quite there in that aspect. But as far as just fun, enjoyable series with good characters, yeah, it's great.
For myself,
By the way, and I had because I wasn't going to say the other one because if you're not going to say it, Murder She Wrote.
Well, I am going to say
So, okay.
Murder She Wrote, season 3, episode 6.
Well, I was going to go with the whole series, but you can go down to one.
Specific.
Oh, for this actual particular. Okay.
So Dead Man's Gold with Leslie Nielsen is actually a guest star in this one. And a group of young treasure hunters come to Cabot Cove looking for a sunken treasure, and one of them ends up dead. I picked that episode. Again, sometimes they just kind of like come to me, and a lot of it is because during this movie, Monk ends up out at sea. The gold hunting is out at sea. Someone is killed. They're trying to figure out which of the friend group, I guess, a little different there. But this is what it reminded me of. Also, great for Leslie Nielsen, Angela Lansbury together. I'm pretty sure that he kisses her. And this is like the only time that like that happened on Murder She Wrote. So it's a great episode to check out. So
he kissed B. Arthur too.
Yes.
Remember they're gonna fake marrying, or
yes,
they actually did get married.
Yeah, at the end of this, that's how they end.
That's who it. Okay, he did. Okay, I remember it was like, oh, we're gonna whatever,
funny.
And then they did fall in love. Okay.
So yeah, that's what it reminded me of. That's a great episode to check out. It doesn't have quite as dark of a feel to it as maybe this movie did, but what about Fan Corner? I know you had some favorites. What were some of the favorite episodes?
So the universe, everyone had their individual ones, but the universal one was Mr. Monk and the game show.
Oh,
and
that's a
so
great
I watched that one. It didn't matter. Like people would give me a list of like 3 or 4, but everybody had that one on there, usually as their number one with three other ones. And we were talking before, and I wanted to bring this up in the romance roundup, but what was really touching about that episode, first of all, it was a good episode, and I see why everyone enjoyed it. But what was also really nice about it's when Trudy introduces Monk to her parents, and he's obviously has his quirks, but it was just so nice just seeing the way that they weren't like, Trudy, what the hell are you doing? They really embraced him. I mean, she's cutting his food for him there. He had to wipe his feet, like 70 sometimes. It was like very high. And you could see they're like, what's going on? But then it flashes forward and the parents are still very much in Monk's life, very, loving for him. And so they accepted him and, all of his peculiarities, which was kind of like what Trudy, did as well. So I just found that to be, for me, mystery was great, but it really touched me the way that they, the family took him in as well. But back to it, that was the universal favorite episode.
I enjoyed that one too. So I did 2 different polls for this one. Overall, for Monk, the TV show, what did people think? So maybe you're on the fence, maybe you've never watched Monk. So 5 out of 5, 64% of people, 5 out of 5 this show, which that is a huge yes, an advocate, because I have a pretty good amount of people actually do take my polls when I do it. So this is a good sample size. 4 out of 5, 18%, and 3 out of 5, 9%, 1 out of 2, or 1/2, 9%. So very low at the bottom. So most people really enjoy this series. Now, in terms of this movie, I gave different poll selections here. I wrote, it was just as good as the TV show. 30% of people agreed. It was okay. 25%. Didn't like it, but liked the show. 0%, which never happens. And then haven't watched it, 45%. So most, I would say it's very split. Either if they did like the show, I mean, this movie was okay for them, or people haven't watched it. So
I think it's, I like the series much better.
Yes, I agree with you there too.
But worth a watch. I wouldn't plan your whole weekend around it, but you're looking for
If you're
something.
a Monk fan, give it a go.
Yeah, you're looking for something to watch coming into summer. We just talked about maybe not a lot of new mysteries on Hallmark. Yeah, it's over on Peacock. Give it a watch.
Well, what is coming up for us next week?
Next week, we're going to Martha's Vineyard, and we're going to be talking about Poisoned in Paradise. Yeah.
You will see. That's where I asked when you asked what we wanted to do, and I was like, I don't think you've done a Martha Vineyard movie
Wonder
yet.
why.
And we will see what we think.
Okay, Andrea, it's time to get going. I wish your Timberwolves are in a little bit of a hole, but
shoot, as this airs, either we're done or we're clinging.
Clinging. Let's hope it's clinging.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
Goodbye.